How could a relatively small predator dominate an entire ancient ecosystem and dictate early reptile survival patterns? Why did lightweight hollow skeletal structures evolve specifically to maximize sprinting velocity across open prehistoric floodplains? What evolutionary purpose did a primitive wishbone serve in these early hunters long before birds ever took flight? How did accelerated biological growth cycles allow vulnerable hatchlings to reach full adult size within merely 4 years? Did preserved juvenile skeletons inside adult rib cages actually prove ancient cannibalism or reveal a completely different predator? Why did a single prehistoric quarry yield over 1,000 perfectly preserved fossils representing one massive catastrophic event? What specific ecological advantages enabled these slender hunters to outcompete larger rivals while securing vital territory across the Triassic? Don't miss what comes next in this story. Watch to the very end.
Hi, I'm Jonny Dony, and welcome to a channel dedicated to scientifically grounded dinosaur documentaries. In time's shadows of the Hollow Stride, we explore the arid Triassic Floodplains, where the agile Coelophysis once thrived. Follow our cinematic soundtracks on Spotify and Apple Music, where one lucky subscriber wins $100 monthly. YouTube monetization has grown highly unpredictable lately, so this project now depends entirely on direct audience backing. Please consider joining me on Patreon, because every single contribution directly funds the production of our next film. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you never miss an episode. Now, let us step back into deep time together.
Shadows of the Hollow Stride. The earth is full of ghosts that whisper secrets of vanished worlds. Mary Oliver. Triassic Floodplains. Red sandstone ridges catch the morning light across a vast continental interior. The underlying geology preserves a landscape shaped by relentless tectonic forces and shifting crustal plates. 220 million years ago, the ancient supercontinent dominated the globe. Seasonal rains carve shallow channels through the dry basin floor before vanishing into porous soil. Water retreats rapidly across the sun-baked terrain, leaving behind cracked mud and isolated pools. This arid floodplain dictates the fundamental rhythm of survival. Ancient coniferous trees cluster along distant waterways, casting long shadows across the exposed sediment. A platysaurus herd browses quietly among the scattered branches and ferns. The vegetation thrives despite the harsh seasonal cycles and limited moisture. Dust settles heavily on the open ground as temperatures climb steadily toward the midday peak. Wind sweeps across the plains, carrying pollen and fine volcanic ash from distant ranges. The atmosphere remains thick and intensely warm throughout the entire afternoon. Steady geological layers accumulate slowly beneath the shifting sands and dry riverbeds. Each sedimentary band records another distinct cycle of severe drought and sudden heavy rainfall. The stratigraphy reveals a patient chronicle of relentless environmental persistence. The Triassic ecosystem operates on strict resource boundaries that dictate daily movement patterns. Small aquatic reptiles linger near shrinking water margins, waiting patiently for cooler evening hours. The expansive basin floor contracts steadily as the prolonged dry season advances. An ancient phytosaur rests silently on the muddy bank, its armored back blending seamlessly with the dark silt. The surrounding reeds sway gently in the fading evening light. Moisture concentrates heavily within this isolated seasonal channel. Shadows stretch long across the cracked earth as daylight fades completely behind the western ridges. Nocturnal insects emerge in quiet numbers, navigating the rapidly cooling substrate. The landscape transitions swiftly from blistering daytime heat to sudden evening chill. A small Morganucodon darts swiftly beneath a fallen conifer log, seeking essential shelter from the approaching night. The dense undergrowth provides crucial cover against the rapidly dropping temperatures across the valley. Isolated microhabitats sustain fragile life across the broader barren expanse. The Triassic night settles heavily over the quiet plains, bringing stillness to the restless terrain. Pale starlight illuminates the vast emptiness of the ancient continental interior. Absolute silence dominates the landscape until the first pale morning light returns. Dawn breaks with sharp clarity over the exposed ancient sandstone formations and weathered outcrops. The morning sun reveals distinct tracks crossing the hardened mud from multiple converging directions across the terrain. Renewed movement resumes steadily as the basin warms once more. Despite its modest dimensions, it functioned as a dominant carnivore within its ecosystem, occupying a crucial trophic position that shaped early reptile community dynamics. The surrounding habitat adjusted to this steady predatory pressure. Spatial boundaries shifted accordingly across the basin floor. A pure theropod moves cautiously through the scattered brush, maintaining careful distance from established territorial boundaries. The open terrain offers very little natural cover for sudden approaches. Spatial awareness governs every brief interaction across this exposed ground. Geological time presses forward with indifferent certainty across the vast shifting floodplain and ancient riverbeds. Deep sediment layers slowly bury the physical evidence of daily survival. The earth records each passing season without hesitation or pause. The arid landscape endures as atmospheric patterns continue their ancient seasonal rotation across the continent. Vital moisture returns only to withdraw again, testing every fragile living system. The floodplain holds steady against relentless geological pressure and deep time. This chapter reveals that modest predators dictated entire Triassic ecosystems through strict seasonal boundaries. I want your analysis on how drought shaped their survival. Please like and subscribe so I can continue documenting ancient landscapes. The next chapter examines how hollow bones enabled unprecedented running speeds.
Bipedal species. A slender frame rises onto its hind limbs across the dry basin floor. The animal balances effortlessly on two legs while scanning the open ground. This bipedal posture defines the entire species across the late Triassic landscape. The structure prioritizes agility over raw power. The name directly references hollow bones, which significantly reduced body mass and enabled exceptional running speeds necessary for capturing agile prey across open Triassic floodplains. Air-filled vertebrae lighten the frame without sacrificing structural strength. The skeleton operates as a finely tuned engine, Mature individuals stand roughly 1 meter tall at the hip and stretch 3 meters from nose to tail tip. They weigh barely 20 kilograms in full maturity. A contemporary sauropodomorph grazes among scattered conifers, dwarfing the smaller hunter. Size dictates a completely different survival strategy. Gracile limb bones support the entire mass during rapid directional changes. The slender architecture channels kinetic energy directly into forward momentum. This specialized body plan rejects heavy armor in favor of pure velocity. Every stride conserves precious metabolic reserves across the heat. A heavy tail extends behind the hips to act as a dynamic counterweight during sharp turns. The caudal vertebrae stiffen under muscular control. A massive contemporary Rawasuchian rests near the riverbank, completely stationary. The smaller animal relies entirely on continuous motion for safety. Long metatarsals stretch with each rapid step across the baked clay. The foot structure locks into a narrow track that minimizes ground contact. A primitive Triassic pterosaur glides silently overhead, casting a fleeting shadow. The terrestrial runner never pauses to observe the aerial traffic. The elongated neck pivots independently of the torso during sustained forward travel. This anatomical separation maintains visual focus while the legs dictate pace. Rapid head adjustments track subtle movements across the dry scrub. Precision coordination replaces brute sensory dominance in this niche. Cardiovascular efficiency powers long-distance travel between scattered seasonal water sources. The respiratory system extracts maximum oxygen during extended pursuits. A tiny contemporary synapsid darts beneath a fallen log, entirely unnoticed. The larger creature conserves its energy for targeted bursts. The pelvic girdle channels force upward from the ankles to the lower spine. Robust ilium blades anchor powerful retractor muscles for acceleration. Juvenile forms display identical structural proportions despite their reduced dimensions. The architectural blueprint remains consistent across every life stage. Histological layers reveal accelerated tissue deposition during early developmental phases. Young individuals reach functional maturity within just 3 or 4 years. A large aquatic archosaur patrols the distant channel margins. The terrestrial runner outpaces any waterbound competitor through sheer agility. A fused furcula sits just ahead of the sternum to stabilize the shoulder girdle. This wishbone structure absorbs impact during high-speed directional shifts. The thoracic cavity expands fully to support sustained aerobic activity. Structural reinforcement enables relentless daily movement without structural fatigue. Multiple individuals converge around shrinking water channels during extended dry spells. These temporary gatherings reflect environmental necessity rather than permanent social bonds. The crowded basin floor forces constant spatial awareness among the group. Physical proximity demands careful navigation across the packed terrain. The daily circuit spans several kilometers across uneven terrain and scattered vegetation patches. Lightweight construction prevents rapid muscle fatigue over extended distances. Each individual maintains a steady cruising pace between hunting grounds. The landscape dictates movement patterns through relentless seasonal cycles. This streamlined morphology occupies a precise trophic position across the ancient ecosystem. The animal exploits gaps left by heavier contemporary carnivores. Aerodynamic efficiency translates directly into consistent survival advantages across the basin. Form and function align perfectly with environmental demands. The deep tail swings wide to counterbalance a sudden lateral lunge across the hardpan. Both feet plant simultaneously before launching into the next sustained sprint. This elegant bipedal configuration carries the animal forward without hesitation. The silhouette vanishes into the shimmering heat. Could hollow bones truly sustain a predator across harsh Triassic basins? My analysis confirms lightweight frames prioritize relentless agility over brute strength. Like and subscribe to help me continue documenting these ancient adaptations. I will reveal how specialized jaws and early wishbones convert speed into strikes.
Clawed frame. The slender skull tilts downward, revealing extensive cranial openings that systematically reduce structural weight. These strategic fenestrae preserve mechanical integrity during rapid directional shifts. A browsing sauropodomorph moves slowly nearby, illustrating alternative jaw morphology built for crushing foliage rather than striking. Flexible cervical vertebrae allow precise head alignment while tracking rapid prey movements across the basin floor. The neck muscles contract in rapid succession to maintain visual focus. A small synapsid scurries past, emphasizing body mass scale compared to the agile hunter. The lower jaw hinges with remarkable speed, closing the distance before escape routes fully materialize. Lightweight construction prevents momentum loss during sudden lateral strikes. Passing pterosaurs cast fleeting shadows overhead, showing alternative locomotion adaptation entirely divorced from terrestrial mechanics. Rapid acceleration demands immediate stabilization of the entire shoulder girdle during pursuit. The specialized furcula absorbs tremendous torque generated during high-speed pivots and sudden directional changes. A contemporary phytosaur waiting nearby provides comparative limb deployment for navigating shallow channels. Fossil evidence confirms the presence of a furcula, demonstrating that this structural feature evolved in theropods long before the emergence of avian flight capabilities. The wishbone acts as a rigid spring during every stride, distributing mechanical stress evenly across the chest. Hollow vertebral segments further decrease overall mass without compromising structural resilience during sustained running sequences. The lightweight spine bends fluidly to absorb ground impact forces. A pure theropod tracking distant prey demonstrates contrasting limb mechanics optimized for endurance rather than explosive bursts. The deep tail functions as a dynamic counterbalance, shifting weight distribution with mathematical precision. Every lateral sweep corrects the center of gravity before momentum carries the body off course. The rigid architecture constantly maintains equilibrium across uneven terrain during rapid pursuits. Gracile hind limbs drive forward with piston-like efficiency, converting stored elastic energy into pure forward velocity. Muscle fibers contract rapidly along the femur and tibia during each stride cycle. The skeletal architecture prioritizes sustained speed over raw power generation. Curved claws extend from each digit, gripping loose sediment with remarkable traction during sudden directional changes. The keratin sheaths prevent slippage across dry floodplain substrates. The sharp curvature locks firmly into the packed earth before the next powerful push. Metatarsal bones align in tight formation, creating a rigid lever that maximizes stride length across open ground. The compact foot structure channels ground reaction forces directly through the ankle joint. Structural efficiency defines every aspect of the locomotor design. Tendon networks stretch along the posterior leg, storing kinetic energy during the stance phase of each step. Elastic recoil releases stored power during the subsequent push-off sequence. The biological spring mechanism operates continuously across varying terrain gradients throughout the day. Joint articulations permit extensive range of motion, allowing the limbs to clear obstacles without disrupting forward momentum. The hip socket rotates smoothly to accommodate rapid lateral shifts. Mechanical precision governs every micro-adjustment during high-velocity sprints across the open floodplain. The sternum anchors powerful pectoral muscles, transmitting upper body stability directly to the forelimbs during balance corrections. Lightweight rib structures expand to facilitate rapid oxygen intake during sustained movement. Respiratory efficiency sustains prolonged exertion across arid landscapes without compromising structural integrity. Sensory receptors along the jawline detect subtle ground vibrations transmitted through the substrate during pursuit. Neural pathways process tactile feedback instantaneously, guiding strike trajectories with remarkable accuracy. Anatomical integration links environmental perception directly to rapid motion. While earlier chapters map the terrain, this segment reveals the skeletal engineering behind its speed. I confirmed that hollow bones and an early furcula transformed heavy mass into precise pursuit mechanics. Like and subscribe to track my paleontological research. The next chapter details how this anatomy secured Thrinaxodon prey.
Hunting diet. The lightweight skull snaps forward with sudden precision across the dry basin floor. Hollow cranial fenestrae minimize structural drag during rapid lateral strikes. Swift jaws secure an agile tritylodont before the small synapsid can vanish into the dense root tangles across the open ground. Caloric efficiency drives every feeding sequence across the open terrain each morning. Rapid ingestion minimizes handling time while maximizing immediate energy return. A successful hunt yields essential nutritional rewards before rival predators swiftly detect the fresh scent drifting on the dry wind. Juvenile archosaurs and early amphibians comprise the core dietary staples across this arid landscape. The slender frame navigates dense cycad thickets with minimal acoustic disturbance. Careful foraging consistently tracks scattered vital prey distributions across the shifting seasonal floodplain channels with deliberate tactical patience. Daily survival relies upon efficient movement patterns that conserve vital energy reserves. The hunter pauses carefully near a drying watercourse across the basin to monitor approaching daily wildlife. Strategic ambush positions exploit the predictable routes of thirsty reptiles seeking scarce moisture across the dry earth. Histological bone analysis reveals remarkably accelerated developmental phases during early life stages across local populations. Juveniles reach full adult dimensions within just 3 to 4 years of hatching. This rapid maturation ensures highly consistent, vital individual survival across unpredictable seasonal resource fluctuations. Expanding territorial ranges compensate for diminishing prey concentrations across the shrinking basin. The carnivore consistently shifts active hunting grounds to follow reliable seasonal vegetation growth. A highly diverse diet composition effectively buffers against localized ecological shortages throughout prolonged dry months across the region. A contemporary Rawasakian silhouette drifts steadily across the distant horizon without triggering immediate alarm. The predator ignores the massive quadruped while carefully scanning lower vegetation. Focused attention remains methodically fixed upon smaller vertebrates that provide essential, reliable daily caloric intake. Swift lateral strikes utilize the highly flexible cervical region for precise directional control. The lightweight frame maintains optimal forward momentum during rapid pursuit sequences across the open ground. Successful feeding consistently requires sustained critical aerobic capacity and exact spatial timing across the basin. Opportunistic scavenging supplements active hunting when fresh kills become genuinely scarce. The carnivore carefully investigates decaying remains near scattered conifer groves for essential vital supplementary nutrients. This highly flexible dietary strategy consistently maximizes daily energy acquisition across fluctuating environmental conditions throughout the year. Seasonal water sources dictate daily movement corridors across the expansive semi-arid floodplain. The hunter strategically tracks reliable moisture channels to intercept highly concentrated prey populations across the terrain. Efficient navigation consistently minimizes unnecessary vital caloric expenditure during prolonged dry intervals. A small tritylodont burrows swiftly beneath a fallen horsetail frond to escape immediate detection. The predator notes the ground disturbance but redirects attention toward a larger distant target. Selective foraging consistently prioritizes higher essential caloric returns over minor opportunistic encounters. Cranial fenestrae absorb critical impact forces during forceful bites against struggling vertebrate prey. The specialized jaw mechanics allow rapid prey processing without structural compromise across the floodplain. Optimized feeding cycles consistently sustain daily metabolic demands throughout extended hunting expeditions across open terrain. Established hunting territories encompass diverse microhabitats ranging from seasonal river channels to open basins. The carnivore carefully patrols distinct boundary markers to maintain exclusive access to prime vital essential resources. Territorial fidelity ensures predictable prey availability across consecutive seasonal cycles throughout the year. A distant pterosaur circles slowly high above the basin without interfering with ground activities. The terrestrial hunter consistently ignores aerial competitors while maintaining focused pursuit across open terrain. Ground-level foraging remains the primary survival mechanism across this ancient ecosystem throughout the region. The active predator remarkably shapes local prey population structures through consistent selective pressure across generations. Daily hunting success directly influences broader food web stability across the landscape. This sustained ecological role consistently maintains delicate balance within the ancient Triassic basin. The next chapter reveals how shrinking water sources triggered intense territorial conflicts. My tracking of their feeding efficiency explains exactly why these clashes occurred. Like and subscribe to follow this ecological shift. I will show how fossil evidence completely disproves the cannibalism theory.
Predator rivalry. Two rivals lock jaws along the shrinking river bank, testing each other's grip. The larger male drives his slender neck forward, forcing his competitor backward into the dry mud. The strike breaks his rival's stance. The victor claims the prime drinking ground. A Chindosaurus emerges from the conifer shade, targeting a solitary forager. The smaller theropod pivots sharply, driving its hind claws into the attacker's exposed flank. The predator stumbles backward, abandoning the ambush. The agile defender escapes into the tall ferns. Heavy jaws snap upward from the murky channel as a Rudiodon phytosaur strikes. The theropod leaps clear, snapping its own teeth against the reptile's armored snout in a desperate defense. The wound is enough to deter the aquatic hunter. Dust rises as 3 males circle a contested carcass near the drying mud. 2 combatants lunge simultaneously, jaws clamping onto each other's shoulders in a brutal territorial clash. The weaker rival retreats, leaving the contested prize undefended across the basin. A Daemonosaurus stalks through the scattered cycad fronds, its long stride closing the distance rapidly. The defending Coelophysis turns, delivering a sharp strike to the rival's lower jaw. The larger predator recoils from the sudden impact across the open ground. A massive Postosuchus blocks the narrow water path, its heavy body poised for an attack. The agile theropod darts beneath the archosaur's sweeping tail, striking at its vulnerable hind limbs. The giant competitor shifts backward slowly, conceding the entire crossing. 2 mature individuals press their slender frames together along the cracked basin floor. Jaws grind against exposed neck vertebrae as each animal tests the other's endurance in this relentless rivalry. The subordinate finally yields the contested territory without hesitation. An Eudomorphodon dives from the pale sky, its sharp teeth aimed at a distracted juvenile. The parent snaps upward, driving a swift counterattack against the descending wing membrane. The flying reptile banks away across the basin, the defense successful. The returning Chindosaurus lunges again, its powerful jaws seeking the smaller animal's throat. The defender pivots, raking sharp claws across the predator's snout in a calculated clash. The wound sends the larger hunter retreating into the dense brush. A sudden dispute erupts over a newly exposed burrow entrance. 2 rivals ram their lightweight skulls together, the impact echoing across the dry plain. One competitor breaks his defensive stance and finally withdraws, leaving the secure shelter untouched. A heavy Rawasuchian lunges from the reed beds, targeting a straggling forager. The agile theropod sidesteps, driving a precise strike against the archosaur's exposed flank. The massive competitor recoils quickly, abandoning the pursuit across the cracked earth. Another Daemonosaurus emerges from the conifer line, initiating a sudden attack near the water's edge. The defender meets the charge head-on, locking jaws with the rival's lower neck. The predator breaks contact quickly and retreats into the shadows. Drought forces rivals into close combat along the receding channel. 2 males lock jaws, their clash echoing across the mud. Initial interpretations suggested juvenile remains indicated cannibalism, but distinct crocodile relatives actually explain those bones. The subordinate yields the water. A phytosaur strikes from the shallows, its armored jaws snapping toward a drinking juvenile. The adult theropod pivots sharply, delivering a forceful kick against the reptile's exposed snout. The aquatic predator submerges immediately, completely defeated by the swift defense. A final Chindosaurus tests the perimeter as the heat peaks across the floodplain. The group moves together, their coordinated strike forcing the rival to abandon its pursuit entirely. The surviving pack holds its ground, the conflict resolved. This chapter proves that supposed juvenile cannibalism actually represents misidentified crocodile relatives. I want your analysis on how this dietary correction shifts our ecological understanding. Like and subscribe to track my ongoing paleontological research. Chapter 6 reveals how a single quarry preserved over 1,000 articulated skeletons.
Fossil legacy. The final drought tightens across the ancient basin floor. Dust coats every slender limb as the group moves toward the shrinking channel. A pier theropod watches silently from a distant ridge. The landscape demands relentless endurance across the arid plains now. Subterranean water tables retreat beneath deeply fractured mudstone, while the landscape grows increasingly hostile. A contemporary archosaur browses the fading conifers nearby. Intense heat radiates steadily upward from the sun-baked ground. Dry dust clouds drift slowly across the open valley floor. The wandering herd gathers near a shallow depression. Their numbers swell rapidly as isolated individuals converge from all directions. A small synapsid scurries past the foreground, vanishing into dry brush. The collective presence offers temporary safety across the drying banks. Sudden flash floods sweep rapidly across the dry valley. The violent currents trap dozens of exhausted animals in the narrow gorge. Heavy silt currents pull struggling forms toward deeper sediment. The flooded basin quickly becomes a sudden watery tomb. One exhausted hunter finally collapses near the muddy bank. Its heavy ribs settle into the cracked mud as the final breath escapes. Local scavengers gather quickly along the drying shoreline. The lifeless body quietly surrenders to the valley floor. Thousands of articulated skeletons accumulate within the same narrow stratum. The rapid chaotic burial preserves delicate bone structures remarkably intact. Fine anaerobic silt seals every joint and hollow vertebra. Deep geological time begins its slow mineralizing work as minerals replace organic tissue. The supercontinent fractures and slowly drifts apart. Powerful tectonic forces lift the ancient floodplain into arid mountains. Seasonal rainfall slowly washes away the overlying sediment. The buried assemblage waits patiently below the surface as erosion reveals the first hints. Field crews carefully excavate the exposed sandstone ridge daily. Fine brushes clear centuries of compacted dust from delicate ribs. Each carefully recovered specimen reveals pristine anatomical detail. Researchers document the findings meticulously while ancient stone preserves the final moments. The famous Ghost Ranch quarry yields over 1,000 perfectly articulated specimens. This represents one of the largest single-species accumulations ever documented. Paleontologists map the dense fossil bed with absolute precision. The comprehensive data transforms theoretical models entirely today. Basal theropod lineages branch outward across vast geological epochs. The structural blueprint survives remarkably in avian descendants. Hollow bones persist directly in modern bird anatomy. The ancient skeletal design echoes continuously through deep time as evolution refines rather than erases. Distinct sexual dimorphism emerges clearly across the recovered population. Two distinct pelvic forms indicate separate biological roles. Growth rings trace rapid juvenile development accurately across generations. Researchers measure every preserved dimension carefully, while distinct patterns reveal complex life cycles. Early cannibalism theories fade under rigorous microscopic examination. Recovered stomach contents actually belong to small crocodile relatives. The long-standing controversy dissolves into precise stratigraphic context entirely. Modern paleontology corrects early assumptions completely as recovered fossilized meals clarify ancient diets. The entire lineage vanishes abruptly at the Triassic boundary. Severe global climatic shifts overwhelm fragile terrestrial ecosystems. Emerging competitor species claim the vacant ecological niches rapidly. The original genus leaves absolutely no direct survivors as natural adaptation dictates survival. Stratigraphic layers compress millions of years into remarkably thin sheets. The preserved bone bed bridges distant ancient eras perfectly. Dedicated researchers reconstruct complex population dynamics from scattered fragments daily. The geological archive speaks clearly across deep epochs without hesitation. Definitive fossil truth emerges from the weathered sandstone. Every perfectly articulated skeleton confirms a remarkable evolutionary journey. Modern paleontology honors the ancient lineage through careful study. The enduring legacy survives directly in living descendants as stone preserves the final chapter. My investigation of this Triassic predator concludes with the final geological records. Consider how these articulated skeletons permanently transformed modern paleontological research methods. Subscribe and like to support accurate scientific documentation on this channel. Explore my full archive to examine other remarkable fossil discoveries.
Our Shadows of the Hollow Stride journey concludes here alongside the remarkably agile Coelophysis. I'm Jonny Dony, and I genuinely appreciate every viewer who explored this ancient Triassic landscape with me. Please subscribe and leave a comment sharing which anatomical adaptation fascinated you most during our film. My Patreon community receives every new dinosaur documentary exactly 1 week before it arrives on YouTube. Deep gratitude extends to all sponsors and channel members whose steady financial backing funds each meticulous production. Your continued dedication transforms rigorous paleontological research into accessible narratives that reach curious audiences worldwide. In just a few seconds, 2 equally fascinating dinosaur documentaries will appear on your screen. Continue your prehistoric adventure and discover another remarkable ancient creature alongside me.